pleasant day to everyone. I am Reogene Nilias Osho, 24 years of age, currently living in Apo Ilauod, Alicia, Bohol. I am a second-year student in Trinidad Municipal College, taking up the course of Bachelor of Science in Office Administration. I am belong to BSOA 2, Block 19. So, I am here to discuss the evolution of agrarian reform in the Philippines. So first, let us ask what is the history of agrarian reform in the Philippines. So the Agricultural Land Reform Code or RA 3844 was a major Philippine land reform law enacted in 1963 under President Diosdado Macapagal to make the small farmers more independent, self-reliant, and responsible citizens as a source of genuine strength in our society. So, the main purpose of agrarian reform program is to provide landowners equality in terms of income opportunities, empower landowner beneficiaries to have equitable land ownership, enhance agricultural production and productivity, and provide employment to more agricultural workers, and to put an end to conflicts regarding land ownership. So, let us study what is the agrarian reform in the Philippine history. The agrarian reform history had 7 contents, which are the pre-Spanish period, the Spanish period, the First Philippine Republic, the American period, Commonwealth period, Japanese occupation, and the Philippine Republic. So let's tackle about the pre-Spanish period, which give the statement that this land is ours, God gave this land to us. Before the Spaniard came to the Philippines, Filipinos live in village or barangays, ruled by a chief or datus. The datus comprised the nobility, then came the maharlikas or the freemen, followed by the aliping mamamahay or the serf, and the aliping sagigilid or the slaves. However, despite the existence of the different classes in the social structure, practically everyone had the access to the fruits of the soil, meaning they have access sa yuta nga ilahang gipuy-an. So, money was unknown and rice served as the medium of exchange. So, wala ibili ang kwarta sa ilang panahon sa pre-Spanish period. Kay ang ilahang gihatagan og bili ang mga humay. So, in Spanish period, they say the statement that we united we stand, divided we fall. When the Spaniard came to the Philippines, the concept of encomienda or the royal land grants was introduced. This system grants that encomenderos must defend his encomienda from external attack, maintain peace and order within, and support the missionaries. In turn, the encomendero acquired the right to collect the tribute from Indios. So, mas naa na sila'y right sa pag-collect sa mga tao. Dili pareha sa pre-Spanish period nga murara pud sila even though naa sila'y kanang classes sa social structure, pero naa sila'y katungod sa paggamit sa yuta sa panahon sa una. Pero sa Spanish period, naanay mga encomienderos nga mokolekta sa tribute sa ilahang mga abot gibali sa akong pagsabot. The system, however, degenerated into abuse of power. So na abuse na ang sa panahon sa Spanish period, naanay nag-rule, naanay murag leader kumbaga, naanay nag-handle, and the tribute soon became land rents to a few powerful landlords. And the natives who once cultivated the land in freedom were transformed into mere share tenants. So, trabahante na lang sila. In First Philippine Republic, the yoke has finally broken. Mo na ang statement nga gihatag sa First Philippine Republic. When the first Philippine Republic was established in 1899 with General Emilio Aguinaldo declared in the Malolos Constitution, his intention is to confiscate large estates, especially the so-called friar lands. So, ang intention ni General Emilio Aguinaldo is to confiscate kuno sa mga dagko nga mga yuta. However, as the republic was short-lived, Aguinaldo's plan was never implemented. So wala day ni siya ma-implement sa panahon sa First Philippine Republic. Although lami siya og mga kanang plano, pero wala day siya ma-implement. In American period, the statement is Long Live America, the significant legislation enacted during the American period. This says that Philippine Bill of 1902 set the ceilings of the hectareage of private individuals and corporations may acquire. It has the 16 hectares for private individuals and 1,024 hectares for corporation. It also states that Land Registration Act of 1902 or the Act number 496, which provided for a comprehensive registration of land titles under the torrent system, and the Public Land Act of 1903, which introduced the homestead system in the Philippines, and last is the Tenancy Act of 1933 or the Act number 4054 and 4113, which is the regulated relationship between landowners and tenant of rice or the 50-50 sharing and the sugarcane land. The torrent system, which the American instituted for the registration of lands, did not solve the problem completely. Either they were not aware of the law or if they did, they could not pay the survey costs and other fees required in applying for a torrent title. On Commonwealth period, they say the statement that government for the Filipinos. So, ang government para na day kuno sa tanang mga Pilipinos. When President Manuel L. Quezon espoused the social justice program to arrest the increasing social unrest in Central Luzon, he had the legislation enacted during the Commonwealth period, which is the 1935 Constitution, the Commonwealth Act number 178, or an amendment to Rice Tenancy Act number 4045, and the National Rice and Corn Corporation or the NARIC in 1936, and the Commonwealth Act number 461 in 1937, and the Rural Program Administration created on March 2, 1939. On Japanese occupation, they say the statement of the era of Hukbalahap. The Second World War World War II started in Europe in 1939 and in Pacific in 1941. Hukbalahap controlled whole areas of Central Luzon. Landlords who supported the Japanese lost their land for peasant, while those who supported the Huks earned fixed rentals in favor of the tenants. Unfortunately, the end of the war also signaled the end of gains acquired by the peasant. Upon the arrival of the Japanese in the Philippines in 1942, peasant and workers' organization grew strength. Many peasants took up arms and identified themselves with the anti-Japanese group. The Hukbalahap or the Hukbo ng Bayan laban sa Hapon Philippine Republic. On the Philippine Republic, the new republic is stated. After the establishment of the Philippine independence in 1946, the problem of land tenure remained. This became worse in certain areas. Thus, the Congress of the Philippines revised the tenancy law. On President Manuel A. Rojas in 1946-1948, he enacted the following laws, which is the Republic Act number 34, which the established of the 70-30 sharing arrangement and regulating shared tenancy contracts, and the Republic Act No. 55, which provided for a more effective safeguard against arbitrary ejectments of tenants. When Elpidio R. Quirino on 1948 and 1953, he enacted the following law, which is the Executive Order No. 355, issued on October 23 on 1950, which is the replace the National Land Settlement and Administration with Land Settlement Development Corporation, or the LASIDECO, which takes over the responsibilities of the Agricultural Machinery Equipment Corporation and the Rice and Corn Production Administration. When the time of Ramon Magsaysay on 1953-1957, he enacted the following law, which is the Republic Act No. 1160 of 1954, which is the abolish of the LASIDESCO and the establish of the National Resettlement and Rehabilitation Administration, or the NARA, to resettle dissidents and landless farmers. It was particularly aimed at rebel returnees, providing homelands and farmlands in Palawan and Mindanao. He also enacted the Republic Act No. 1199, which is the Agricultural Tenancy Act of 1954, which governed the relationship between landowners and tenant farmers by organizing shared tenancy and leasehold system. The law provided the security of tenure of tenant. It also created the Court of Agrarian Relation. He also enacted the Republic Act No. 1400, or the Land Reform Act of 1955. This created the Land Tenure Administration, or the LTA, which was responsible for the acquisition and distribution of large tenanted rice and corn lands over 200 hectares for individuals and 600 hectares for corporation. And last, he enacted the Republic Act No. 821, which is the creation of Agricultural Credit Cooperative Financing Administration, which is the provided small farmers and shared tenant loans with low interest rate of 6 to 8%. When the time of President Carlos P. Garcia on 1957-1961, he continued the program of President Ramon Magsaysay with no new legislation passed. So he continued only the enacted law of President Ramon Magsaysay. When the time of President Diosdado P. Macapagal on 1961-1965, he enacted the following law, which is the Republic Act No. 3844 of August 8, 1963, which is the Agricultural Land Reform Code that abolished shared tenancy, institutionalized leasehold, and set retention limit at 75 hectares, invested rights of preemption and redemption for tenant farmers, and provided for an administrative machinery for implementation. Institutionalized a judicial system of agrarian cases and incorporated extension, marketing, and supervised credit system of service of farmers' beneficiary. The RA was hailed as one that would emancipate Filipino farmers from bondage of tenancy. When the time of President Ferdinand E. Marcos on 1965-1986, Proclamation No. 1081 on September 21, 1972 ushered the period of new society. 5 days after the proclamation of martial law, the entire country was proclaimed a land reform area, and simultaneously, the Agrarian Reform Program was decreed. When President Marcos enacted the following laws, he enacted the law of Republic Act No. 6389, which is the Code of Agrarian Reform, and the RA No. 6390 of 1971, which is the created the Department of Agrarian Reform, and the Agrarian Reform Special Account Fund. It strengthened the position of farmer and expanded the scope of agrarian reform. He also enacted the Presidential Decree Number 2, which is hailed on September 26, 1972, which declared the country under land reform program. It enjoined all agencies and offices of the government to extend full cooperation and assistance to DAR. It also activated the Agrarian Reform Coordinating Council. And last, he enacted the law of Presidential Decree Number 27 on October 21, 1972, which is the restricted land reform scope to tenanted rice and corn lands, and set the retention limit at 7 hectares. When the time of President Corazon C. Aquino on 1986-1992, the Constitution ratified by the Filipino people. During the administration of President Corazon C. Aquino, he provides under Section 21 under Article 2 that the state shall promote comprehensive rural development and agrarian reform. On June 10, 1988, former President Corazon C. Aquino signed into law the Republic Act Number 6657, or otherwise known as the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law, or the CAR. The law became effective on June 15, 1988. Subsequently, 4 presidential issuances were released on July 1987 after 48 nationwide consultations before the actual law was enacted. President Corazon C. Aquino enacted the following law, which is the Executive Order Number 228 on July 16, 1987, which declared full ownership to qualified farmer beneficiaries covered by PD 27. It also determined the value remaining unvalued rice and corn lands, subject also to PD 27, and provide for the manner of payment by the FBS and mode of compensation to landowners. She also enacted the law of Executive Order Number 229 on July 22, 1987, which is the provided mechanism for the implementation of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, or the CARP, and the Proclamation Number 131 on July 22, 1987, which is the instituted the CARP as a major program of the government. It provided for a special fund known as the Agrarian Reform Fund, or the ARF, with an initial amount of 50 billion to cover the estimated cost of the program from 1987 to 1992. And the Executive Order Number 129A on July 26, 1987, which is streamlined and expanded the power and operations of DAR, and the Republic Act Number 6657 on June 10, 1988, which is the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law, or the CAR, as an act which became effective on June 15, 1988, and instituted a comprehensive agrarian reform program to promote social justice and industrialization, providing the mechanism for its implementation and for other purposes. This law is still the one being implemented as of present. And the Executive Order Number 405 on June 14, 1990, which is the vested in the Land Bank of the Philippines and the responsibility to determine land valuation and compensation for all lands covered by CARP. And last is the Executive Order Number 407 on June 14, 1990, which is the accelerated the acquisition and distribution of agricultural lands, pasture lands, fish ponds, agroforestry lands, and other lands of the public domain suitable for agriculture. When the time of President Fidel B. Ramos on 1992-1998, when President Fidel B. Ramos formally took over in 1992, his administration came face to face with publics who have lost confidence in the Agrarian Reform Program. His administration committed the vision of fairer and faster and more meaningful implementation of the Agrarian Reform Program. Also, Fidel V. Ramos enacted the following laws, which is the Republic Act number 7881 on 1995, the Republic Act number 7905 on 1995 also, and the Executive Order number 363 on 1997, and Republic Act number 8435 on 1997, which is the Agriculture and Fisheries Modernization Act, or the AFMA, and last is the Republic Act number 8532 on 1998, which is the Agrarian Reform Fund Bill. On time of President Joseph E. Estrada on 1998-2000, he also stated the era para sa mahirap. This was the battle cry that endeared President Joseph Estrada and made him a very popular during the 1998 presidential election. When President Estrada initiated the enactment of the following law, which is the Executive Order number 151 on September 1999, which is the Farmer Trust Fund, allowed the voluntary consolidation of small farm operation into medium and large-scale integrated enterprises that can access long-term capital. During his administration, President Estrada launched the Magkabalikat para sa Kaunlarang Agraryo or Magkasaka. The DAR forged into joint version with private investors into agrarian sector to make FBS competitive. However, the Estrada administration was short-lived. The masses who put him into office demanded for his ouster. When the time of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo on 2000 to 2010, the Agrarian Reform Program under the Arroyo administration is anchored on the vision to make the countryside economically viable for the Filipino family by building partnership and promoting social equity and new economic opportunities toward lasting peace and sustainable rural development. Land tenure improvement, or the DAR, will remain vigorous in implementing land acquisition and distribution component of CARP. The DAR will improve land tenure system through land distribution and leasehold. When the provision of support services, CARP not only involves the distribution of lands but also included the package of support services, which includes the credit assistance, extension services, irrigation facilities, roads and bridges, marketing facilities, and training and technical support program. When infrastructure projects, DAR will transform the agrarian reform communities, or the ARCS, an area focused on integrated delivery of support services, into rural economic zones that will help the creation of job opportunities in the countryside. He also make the Kalahi AR zone, the Kalahi Agrarian Reform, or the KAR were also launched. These zones consist of one or more municipalities with concentration of ARC to achieve a greater agro-productivity. Agrarian justice. Agrarian justice help clear the backlog of agrarian cases. DAR will hire more paralegal officers to support undermanned and judicatory boards and introduce quota system to compel judicatories to work faster on agrarian reform cases. DAR will respect the rights of both farmers and landowners. When the time of President Benigno Aquino III on 2010-2016, President Benigno Aquino III vowed during his 2012 State of the Nation address that he would complete before the end of his term the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program or the CARP, the centerpiece program of the administration of his mother, President Corazon Aquino. The younger Aquino distributed their family-owned hacienda or the Hacienda Luisita Interlac. Apart from the said farm lots, he also promised to complete the distribution of privately owned lands of productive agricultural estates in the country that have escaped the coverage of the program. Under his administration, the Agrarian Reform Community, Connectivity and Economic Support Services or the ARCCESS project was created. It was created to contribute to the overall goal of rural poverty reduction, especially in agrarian reform areas. The Agrarian Production Credit Program or the APCP was provided credit support to crop production to newly organized and existing Agrarian Reform Beneficiaries Organization or the ARBOs and farmers organizations that not qualified to avail themselves of loans under the regular credit windows of banks. The Legal Case Monitoring Service System or the LCMS is a web-based legal system for recording and monitoring various kinds of agrarian cases at the provincial, the regional, and the central office of the DAR to ensure faster resolution and close monitoring of agrarian-related cases was also launched. Aside from these initiatives, Aquino also enacted the Executive Order Number 26 in series of 2011 to mandate the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, the Department of Agrarian Reform, Convergence Initiative to develop a national greening program in cooperation with other government agencies. When the time of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte on 2016 up until present, under his leadership, the President wants to pursue an aggressive land reform program that will help alleviate the life of poor Filipino farmers by prioritizing the provision of support services alongside of land distribution. The President directed the DAR to launch the second phase of agrarian reform where landless farmers would awarded with undistributed lands under the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program or the CARP. Duterte plans to place almost all public lands, including the military reserves, under agrarian reform. The President also placed 400 hectares of agricultural lands in Boracay under CARP. Also, under his administration, the DAR created an anti-corruption task force to investigate and handle reports on alleged anomalous activities by officials and employees of the department. The department also pursues an offline zero backlog in the resolution of cases in relation to agrarian justice, delivery of the Agrarian Reform Program to fast-track the implementation of CARP. The role of the agrarian reform in the Philippines has contributed to the improvement of the socio-economic conditions of landless farmers and political development of the Philippines in terms in engaging the landless in the process of policy making and distribution of large private holdings in the landless. In other words, agrarian reform is the redistribution of the agricultural resources of the country. It is the traditionally agrarian or land reform is confined to the redistribution of land. In a broader sense, it includes related changes in agricultural institutions including credit, taxation, rents, and cooperatives.